Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith along with Ivan Ozerets.
Hello.
Great treat tonight. We're going to just dial some numbers here. We're going to get Coach Perl, Scotty P. Coach P, the one and only. Love this guy. This guy's laugh is just amazing. Met this young man in the 70s, still young at heart.
You have to dial the number there, Steve.
I have to dial the number again. I ended it.
No, it's all.
Yeah. Machine is only as smart as its operator.
How we doing?
The Pearl.
How are you? Hi.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for being a guest on the GreatBase Tennis Podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
You were on the podcast before. I went back and listened to it. It was a great treat to go back and listen to it. And it was a great tribute to your journey in tennis with your parents. I thought what we could do is we could go backwards and start with Coach P wearing purple. I put a few thoughts down here for yesterday. We'll talk a little bit about that. There was a get-together reunion at the Jack Raymond Tennis Club. I guess there was 40 coaches that worked for Vic at one time or another. And I thought, gee, I could write 40 volumes on Vic, and one would be the book of, we call it the Book of Purple now that you're at TCU.
Well, I'm super excited to be here. I've never worn purple before in my life as far as a color for a university or a school. So there's a first for everything. But this is a special place as far as college tennis is concerned, because as you know, the history dating back to the days of Todd Bartson and what he was able to establish here and how it's just continued on over the years is pretty impressive and pretty special. And actually, it was the first time I was on campus just a few weeks ago, and beautiful campus, unbelievably nice tennis facility, 22 outdoor courts, 5 indoor courts, separate building for locker rooms and offices. So all good stuff. The move hasn't been easy, but we're here and we're ready to go. And I'm really looking forward to this.
Todd Bartson, I lived in Tyler, Texas. You came out to visit a few times, helped me training tennis teachers. And I was so privileged to meet Todd Bartson. I wrote down some notes on Todd Bartson. He's from Austin, Texas, but he lived to be 91. Moved to San Angelo, Texas. That's where George Ritchie, father of Nancy and Cliff Ritchie, this small town in West Texas. It's just amazing what came out of that town from a tennis standpoint. But they worked so hard. He's a lefty. He was 50-0 at one time at William and Mary. 1959, he was number 8 in the world. Semifinals to the U.S. Open, Davis Cupper. He beat Tony Trabert in 1954 U.S. Clay Court Championships. In 55, for the longest time, people were talking about Trabert winning the French. It wasn't until 1989 where Michael Chang won. TCU coach, 19 of 20 years, nationally ranked. I mean, it just goes on, like, say, the terms he won the Canadian Open in 54. But I was with Vic Braden in Dallas and Tutt Bartson. And Todd Bartson, Vic Braden, and Glenn Bassett are all basically the same age. And I remember Vic saying, I go, how do you know Todd? He goes, oh, no. He goes, we played tennis together growing up. And he goes, back in the day, they put us in a dorm and the bees would stay with the bees. And it's just amazing to think of Todd Bartson, of course, Vic Braden, and then and Glenn Bassett. We're on about TCU. Tell us about David Roditi.
David Roditi, I have known forever. Since getting here, he and I have spoken, and I never really recruited him coming out of high school. Can't really put a finger on it why. I mean, he was coming out of San Clemente at the time, and I really wasn't keen on many Southern Cal guys coming out to Kansas. Not that I wasn't keen on it, but they probably weren't keen on it.
Right.
So I got to know him later as a player and then as a coach. One of the most impressive things I've read is his assistant, who's been with him almost from the beginning, Devin Bowen. They played together. They've been lifelong friends, but they've been in the top 10 here every year for the last 10 years. And that's not on top of that. They've got, in the last 3 years, they've got 2 indoor titles and 1 outdoor title.
Yeah, they
So,
I was in Texas doing a training session for coaches in San Antonio, and a group of us watched the TCU Texas final.
I mean, so what they've done here in the last decade has been overly impressive. But the connection is that at Kansas, Michael Center played for me and then went on to coach with me. He ended up coming down to TCU, and he hired David Roditi to be his assistant and actually mentored David. And so we all 3 of us played golf last week and then had dinner together and just told story after story about how the torch got passed on and how I'm ending up here now. And so really good guy. And you talk about marketing person, David Roditi is a master marketer, not only of himself, but the program here. I mean, I've been in this town for just about a month, and I don't think I've run into one person that does not know David Roditi. So, I mean, God bless him. I mean, not only did he do it as a player, he's done it as a coach. And TCU has only won 2 national championships in the history of the athletic department. One was in rifle, and the second was last year in men's tennis. So this is a pretty special time to be here. I feel really fortunate and blessed to have, this be my last stop along the way. And as my wife and I have talked, it's always been a big college in a small college town. Most of my stops, Lawrence, Kansas, Knoxville, Tennessee, Toledo, Ohio, that type of thing, Chapel Hill. But this is a smaller university in a metropolitan city. And to be honest with you, we are totally enjoying ourselves here at this point. There's so much to do. The people are so friendly. There's only 8,000 students at TCU right now. I think they're trying to grow to 10,000. So it's a smaller university in a big metropolitan town, and which is something that's totally different. And so far it's been great fun for us.
Yeah, I think comes to my mind. I mean, I certainly spent time when I was in Texas at TCU. I had 3 students who were given scholarships to play at TCU, 3 girls, and they all stopped. They're all doctors now. They just thought it was too much with the lab sciences. Let's back up. What about, is it Devin Bowen, Bowan?
Bowen.
Ian.
Yeah.
Where's he from? What's his background?
Devin is from South Carolina or South Florida as well, Southern Cal as well. He and David knew each other growing up. I think Devin is a little bit older, a year or maybe 2 at the most older. So Devin actually got David to come here to go to school. He was an important piece to that whole thing. And then they've been coaching together. Devin played on the tour, was a pretty darn good doubles player. Probably, I don't know what his highest ranking was. I'm going to guess around 50 or 60. Didn't do quite as well in singles. But he's a master tactician, a very disciplined guy. And just really, in the end, the more I got to know him, he's just a wonderful human being that just loves this place and has been overly kind to my wife and I. Has let us stay at his house when we were looking for a place to live, and on and on and on. So he and his wife, Jackie, live right on the edge of campus. So he literally walks to the courts every day that he wants to. So these are 2 tennis guys that really love TCU, that have done a wonderful job here. And so they're excited to have me. I'm excited to be here. They've got a good team. They've been churning out good players one after another. And so it should be a lot of fun.
You have camps going on now?
They got camps going on. Jake Burnley, who is just finished school here, who's been playing pretty well now, played Djokovic at Wimbledon not long ago, is coming here this week to train. So I'm looking forward to spending some time with him. Jack Pennington Jones was just here the last 2 weeks training with some of the other guys. So we've got guys coming in and out in the summer, and I think David's in the process of running like 7 or 8 weeks straight of camps. So, but the facility is nice here. You got the varsity courts, and then you still got another 16 other courts they call the public courts. So there's plenty of room to have guys training as well as running camps.
Perl, what's up with Michael Center? What's he doing nowadays?
Michael Center, Michael Center's been doing a lot of different things nowadays. He's been raising some money for some investment groups and doing quite well with that. He's been teaching some tennis. He's been traveling with his niece, who's a pretty darn good junior player. He's been doing some lessons in Austin. He's been helping out the Tulsa tennis team as a consultant. So he's been dabbling in a lot of different things. He's doing pretty well. He was here last week. David and I spent 3 days with him and had a wonderful time. So, it's been a tough road for him, but he's, for the most part, I think he's doing about as well as could be expected. And just hoping to dig his teeth into some project or some team, some group, something to just kind of get back to, having something on his mind every single day that he can build, that he can make better.
Yeah.
And so this was a real curveball for him, but I think in the end, he's done, like I said, about as well with it as he could.
Oh, that's great. A couple of things. On Roditi, I wrote down that he went to TCU, he won 250 matches. He's from Mexico, right? Or he's Mexican descent?
And he's Mexican descent, yeah.
Because he played Davis. He was a Davis cover for Mexico, correct?
Yeah. His mom and dad both are from Mexico, or both grew up in Mexico.
41 in the world in doubles. His first year at TCU was 2010. Amazing. He won 250 matches as a player. I don't know how many matches he's won as a coach, but obviously it's a big number. Texas assistant. He was a U State national coach. I remember meeting him just a few times when he was a national coach. Also read, too, that he at one time was the school coach, a high school coach at St. Stephen's Episcopal School in Austin. So he probably was. Yep. He probably was part of the Austin Tennis Academy way back when.
Yeah. Yep. Good guy, good player, loves tennis. He's got the Spanish connection going with a lot of these guys, which has been helpful for them here. And it's like I said, the part that is just really impressive to me is just how much Devin and David love this place. This is home for them. Neither one of them wants to go or coach anywhere else. And so there's history here. And as you know from when we talked a few minutes ago about Todd Bartson, I mean, he's TCU tennis royalty here. And the torch has been passed, and David played for him. And they tell story after story about the amount of time the two of them spent together. And so
I enjoyed watching. I enjoyed watching Tutt. Very quiet, humble, just low key guy, but when he certainly was into fundamentals, which is great to see way back when. In
the fundamentals, and the thing I told David that I'll never forget about Tutt is I never ever saw Tutt lose his composure. Never. No matter how tough the situation was, I saw his teams play in many around the 16 quarterfinals, semifinals. I just didn't make any difference. Bad call, bad this, bad that. Tutt was always Tutt and just a man of complete integrity. So it's fun to be here and have people talk about him, to be honest with you.
We have,
go ahead.
Well, we have a young guy here. He plays for UCLA. I've known him for over 10 years now. Spencer Johnson, his father, Joey Johnson, played at Tyler Junior College, and he went on to get myself in trouble. I think Mississippi State, not Mississippi. So I remember I was teaching tennis teachers. I was very young, and I certainly knew who David Pate was. But back in the day, the junior college program would get a chance to play TCU and Texas. But I've got down here that remember David Pate used to be Billie Jean King's. They used to practice when he was 16, which is I found over time, like Larry Godfrey with Chris Everett, Sharapova, and I'd be at Bollettieri's. She was always with. Seemed like she was with really good 16-year-old boys. I mean, really, really top 16-year-old boys. But he's a TCU guy. He was 18 in the world, number 1 in doubles. But this guy, Cam Nory, I mean, he's taking it up to number 8 in the world. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, guy stopped me. I was recruiting at the clay courts a couple of weeks ago, and he stopped me and he said, "What's the matter with Cam Nory?" So, what are you talking about? I said, "He can't win that much lately. It seems to be in, sitting top 15 in the world. He's not doing that badly." I mean, come on. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, here's a guy that kind of shovels that backhand and has that little pause in the serve, and yet he can compete around the world as a top 15 player. I've not met him to spend time with him yet, but I watched him play recently, and I mean, the guy loves wearing purple when he's out there. The camaraderie and the culture they've built here amongst this team and these guys is really quite special, because not only is there a bond amongst the guys that seems to be quite strong, but a guy like Nory wants to wear purple everywhere he goes.
That's cool.
To let everybody know that the purple and the TCU. So looking forward to spending more time around him and with him, but very impressed with him, not only with his play, but him as a person as well.
First time I watched him play, I was asked to chart a match for somebody we can talk about here in a minute, Matt Clore, you've got to know really well. Matt was coaching Mackenzie McDonald, and I was asked to just make a video off a video, and just this guy, Cam Nory, he's so tough. But then I read where he's a huge rugby fan. So I would like to think that he has the rugby mentality, because that guy can flat out compete.
The guy competes like he's just a dog.
Yeah.
He's a rabid dog out there, and it shows you what a difference somebody that can compete at that high of a level and do it consistently, just what they're able to get out of themselves. Because he's not a kind of guy where you're going to watch him and go, "Wow, that guy's going to be a top 10 player." He's not that guy, but yet he is that guy. So
today I was
good stuff for him.
I was talking to a group of juniors today, and Cam Nory would have got this question. So we have a young man here from England training to learn how to teach tennis, and I was talking about having street smarts. And I was teasing Spencer Johnson. I said he doesn't have street smarts because he's from Utah. And there's no streets in Utah. But just kidding. So anyway, king of sarcasm, Perl. And so I said, well, with street smarts, and we have a kid here from Austria. I said, tell me about street smarts. I gave him the answer. I mean, your parents are very concerned when you cross the street, you got to look left and right. Why do they have to be even more concerned when you go to England? And the kid from Austria raised his hand. He goes, because they drive on the opposite side of the street. But Cam Nory, I say that because he born in South Africa. And then also, too, is that they left where there was a robbery within the family, moves to New Zealand. He schooled in the U.S., but his parents are British, so he plays for England. But anyway, I think they should have a purple shirt out there to put a big P on it for you, Perl.
I appreciate that, but we're going to have to accomplish something. You'll love this story, because as we got into the process of me coming here and we're trying to figure out some of the details, Roditi is telling me, you're going to help us make the difference to win an outdoor championship. I just feel it. I know it. It's just going to be so important for us to get you here. We want to work this thing out, on and on and on. So I happened to be in Stillwater and was able to watch them play the semis and the finals. And so they won the final, and literally at 8:15 the next morning, my phone rings, and it's Roditi. Coach T, I sure hope you don't screw this thing up. You gotta love that.
But this is so different for you. I mean, you're like going to the Boston Celtics. You're starting on top. I think of some of our listeners. The Pearl is from Monroe, Michigan, hometown of Vic Braden, and that's how I know Pearl. As we worked for Vic at the same time, going back to I think 1979. But anyway, with that, let's go forward with the P's, Pearl. Then we'll go on. Help me with my train of thought. Senior moment? Help me out, Yvonne?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you a quick story.
You ever had those senior moments?
Yeah, I have them a lot. But let me add this little story that fits in right now with you talking about Monroe, Michigan and Vic Braden. So we're at 1996. I'm coaching Chris Woodruff, and he beats Andre Agassi at the French on the day they are dedicating that court to Suzanne Lenglen. They play, he and Agassi play 5 sets. It's 4-6, 6-4, 6-7, 6-3, 6-2. And I remember Agassi and him shaking hands. I'm coming off the court, and we drive back to the hotel, and people are hanging out the window of the hotel screaming, Woodruff, Woodruff, Woodruff. Because the match is always on TV in Paris, so everybody had seen the match. Anyway, I get to the hotel room, the phone rings, and it's Tom Gullickson and Jose Higueras, and they want to invite me to the Nike party that night that's being held in downtown Paris at a beautiful upstairs bar. Had like 20 models in there, liquor, drinks, food, everything you can imagine. First class operation. They send a limousine to get me. I go up there. Jose meets me at the top. The bartender puts a bottle in front of me and says, whatever you want here, it's all yours. And as the night goes on, I end up back in the corner, and I'm talking with John McEnroe. and McEnroe, we're talking about the match, and he said, what do you think? And I said, well, I'm really impressed that Woodruff was able to close that out in 5, and especially win the 4th and the 5th set. I've seen guy after guy come close to whether it's Andre or Pete or Jim or any of these guys, but not many guys can close that out. And he looks at me, he says, it didn't have anything to do with Woodruff. Agassi wasn't right. And like only Matt can, he kind of took the luster out of the evening a little bit. But the reason I'm telling you the story is at the press conference, Woodruff mentioned me in the press conference after he beat Agassi. After the end of his piece, 15 reporters circled around me and started asking me questions. And the first question was, where are you from? And I said, Monroe, Michigan. And Bud Collins was standing right there, and he blurted out the home of Vic Braden.
That's cool.
And it was a really kind of a special moment for me personally. I mean, first of all, that he knew Vic was from Monroe, and then you have that connection at a moment like that was pretty good. So I've helped you out now, Smitty. Hopefully you got your senior moment is over and you're back on track.
Yeah, well, thanks. I wrote this down. You said a bottle in front of me. This is a Vic Braden coach used to say this, Mark Hamlin, who you know well. I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. But, my brain cramp with the P's. Earl The Pearl Monroe, the basketball player, but you're the real Pearl from Monroe. That's it. Yeah. But yep. I gotta shout these out. The P's. It's a great letter, P. So we do this sometimes with a letter and say, okay, what words can you come up with? We did this with H the other day. Honor, honesty, humility. Mike Carter, who you helped me train years ago, he worked for the USDA forever, based out of Austin, Texas. He used to do a presentation on the letter P. But here are a couple. PPP, the Book of Pearl. Parental permission for pounding. What do you think of that one?
You got to love that one.
Well, our listeners, I mean, I've spent now decades trying to get people to college tennis, and Coach Perl has spent decades coaching college tennis. Here's another one, PIP. Get your poop in a pile. Yeah. That's the G that's the G version of said get your together, you know. But here's the one that makes me think of the Pearl is profanity does help. When you swear a little bit, it makes your heart rate goes down a little bit. Remember the football coach Mike Ditka? He said he's going to quit swearing, and every time he would swear, he said he'd give one of the players $100. So it was a few days into the training camp, and he has two guys come in his office, and he just goes to his wallet, puts $100 bill on the table for one player, $100 bill on the table for the other players, and he just starts saying, "But
you let loose."
Yeah. Which one do you like better, Pearl? This is going to be in the book of Pearl. We're going to write a volume.
Well,
it's going to be proper preparation prevents poor performance. That's 5. Or proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. Which one you like better?
I like the second one better. Yeah,
I did.
Yeah. Your boy Matt Clower says to me about 3 or 4 months ago. He said, Coach P, you remind me a lot of my brother. I said, Matt, what's that mean? He says, the two of you can go to instant hostility faster than any two human beings I've ever known in my life. So I started mentioning that to some former players about this instant hostility. And I mean, every one of them laughed and then said, yeah, that we've seen that.
Let's go. Chris Clore. We coached a young kid together for 5 years. And, the kid did well. He won the 12s, won the Orange Bowl, won the La Petite. And I was there, so I'm the senior citizen. So Chris takes that really thick, what's it, the gray tape, electrical tape? Duct tape. And he puts it over the kid's mouth because the kid won't stop yapping. And I go, Chris, I think this is a great idea. Let's just poke a hole in it, though. so he can breathe. so the kid can breathe. No, he's older than old. I don't like the term old school, but Chris is older than old school. I mean, with there's a couple of gals here this summer that he spent a lot of time with, and compared to the industry norm, these girls are hitting really well. But the Clore boys, I've got down in Florida next, working backwards from TCU. We started with the last podcast. We always start with baby food, but the Clore brothers, we have a clip of the Clore brothers just shadow swinging, basic essential strokes for doing a little kid camp, and then these guys do backflips. I mean, they're both gymnasts. They both played baseball. Yeah. They both snow skied, and really their tennis is from a small town in Western Carolina. But we'll talk about Matt. Let's talk about Brian Shelton first. I've got down here that, and we talked about Ben Shelton. So Ben was born in 2002, moved to Gainesville 2010, the same year you did, right? Or 2012? So
no, we moved the same time.
Same time.
We showed up we showed up the same time. Yeah. I think Brian got the job at late July, 1st of August, and I showed up like that third week in August.
Let me do this with. I'll just say a few things about Brian Shelton, and then we pay this tribute that you put together for him on audio. Sure. Then we put it on Facebook, so people should see the photos. I was born in 1965. I guess he's 58 then. I'll do the math. Yep. 55 in the world in singles, 52 in doubles. I mean, just to win $100 playing tennis is pretty difficult, but 1.2 million. Of course, that was many years ago, so that you'd have to multiply that by definitely by 2. He was a USTA national coach from 98 to 99. Georgia Tech. We had a player play for him. He was there in 99. 2007, he wins the women's title. Well, people may not know this. I read this. In 96, he was coaching a fellow Michigander like yourself, Melville Washington. Malavai. Yep. And lost in the Wimbledon final to Richard Krajicek. brought up by Bill Tam, who used to be the voice of the USPTA, highly regarded coach. I think one thing too is that the tennis family, though, I mean, obviously you spend so much time with the family now, and you certainly told the in that last podcast how close you really are to the family, the Sheltons. But Todd Witzkin, I remember watching him beat Jimmy Connors in 1986 at the U.S. Open. Indiana kid. You got to be 4 in the world, 41 in doubles, played at USC, died at age 34. So, he died long before his nephew was born. But, so that's a pretty stout tennis family when you think about.
Well, and the interesting part of that story was Brian was playing doubles with Todd. And when he got sick, Brian was trying to go every weekend, every other weekend to Indianapolis to spend as much time with him as he could. And that's when he met and got close with Lisa, his sister, who then they end up getting married.
Oh, wow.
But that's really how the whole thing came together, was when Todd was ill and Brian was going back and forth and back and forth. So that was the beginning of the Witzkin Shelton family. And so, you got a lot of tennis royalty in there between the Sheltons and the Witzkins. And having grown up in the Midwest, obviously I knew of the Witzkins and the family and how good the boys were. And actually Lisa's a pretty good player, and her sister played at Ball State, where I went to school. Their family and our family have spent a lot of time together. It's been wonderful, to be honest with you.
The first time I ever heard his name was our students used to be hired by a woman by the name of Joan Ramey Ford. She used to run tennis camps in Indiana, and she was telling people that Todd Witzkin was going to be great long before he was great. I just remember that. But let's do that, Yvonne. Let's play this for a couple minutes. It's a great tribute, and we'll put up the photos on our social media platforms.
There you go.
Dear Gator Nation, this is Scott Perelmen, and this is a tribute to Coach Brian Shelton and his historic 11 years at the University of Florida. 3 consecutive undefeated SEC regular season men's tennis titles, first time in SEC conference history, first national men's tennis championship ever for Florida, and back-to-back individual NCAA singles champions in Sam Riffis and Benny Shelton. On behalf of myself, my family, former players, staff, and coaches, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your leadership, commitment to our growth, and your mentorship. Your drive to succeed is second to none. I have often referred to you with admiration as the silent assassin. We offer admiration and hugs to your family. Lisa, Emma, and Benny are not only your foundation, but also your motivation. Coach, you have made a difference in all our lives. Kate Hart and myself have been with you from the beginning, and we both have cherished our time together. This journey has not been easy, but we have reached the mountaintop. Coach Shelton, you are the best of the best. We all wish you and Benny tremendous success in your pro tennis journey. On a personal note, I love you, Coach, and thank you for 11 of the best years of my life. Go Gators.
Well written, Perl. That's your mother being an English major. That's great.
Yeah, that is my mother being an English major. Yeah. She would be, hopefully she would be pleased, but I'm sure she would have a critique for me.
Yeah. With, boy, I tell you, I was there the night that they won. That was amazing. Not only did they win, but he closed out the last match.
It turned out to be pretty special the way it all happened, because if you were there, you knew. I mean, we won quickly at 2 doubles. I think we beat them 6-0, but they beat us badly at 1 and 3. And an hour into the singles, I mean, it was a dogfight, and it was looking like it could go either way. And then all of a sudden matches start coming off. And then for Ben Shelton to be the clinching point was just, I mean, it was like you're writing a fairy tale. It was just almost too good to be true the way it happened. And so, yeah, that was a pretty special moment for everybody, to be honest with you.
Tell us about Ben Shelton before he was into tennis. I mean, he's a baseball, football player. I mean, I call him the Patrick Mahomes of tennis. I mean, what an athlete.
Yeah. When we first got here, got to Gainesville, Benny was 9. And the very first night we had dinner together, when we went back to the hotel, Benny and I were at the bottom of the steps and they were up on the 3rd floor. And we were talking about taking the elevator. And I said to Benny, let's you and I race the steps. It's an opportunity. And he remembered that even to this day, because whenever he's faced with a match of significance, he doesn't look at that as being anything but an opportunity. And this is, well, let me backpedal. 9, 10, and 11, he played football and baseball. Emphatically told me, as well as anybody else that would ask, he was never going to play tennis. That was his dad's gig, and he was just going to do his own thing. And he was plenty good and had the right gene to play football. I mean, he'd get clobbered by a guy 2-3 times his size. He'd jump right back up, run right back into the huddle. He was the quarterback at the time. And so what happened was Brian started coming out with Emma, his sister, in the early morning to try to help her with her tennis so she could make the high school team. And what happened, in my opinion, was Benny got jealous. And about, they were into it 6, 8, 10 months. And he says, Dad, can I come too? He said, absolutely. And so,
and the
there you
sisters,
go.
Emma's a little bit older, right?
Emma's a little bit older, and Emma went on to get a scholarship to play at South Carolina and played there 2 years and then transferred back here for 2 years. So she ended up being a very accomplished player as well. But that was the start of Benny. So, I mean, this isn't the same picture that so many of us see with the tennis player that start hitting the ball at 3, 4, or 5 years old. And by the time he's 20 or 21, he's been playing for 15. It's just the opposite with Ben. And that's part of the reason he's so fresh, in my opinion, is he hasn't been beating balls. I mean, this all has happened basically in the last 10 years. So it's an amazing story because of all the different ways that you're able to, become a top 15, top 20 player. It's not the same story for everybody. And one of the great stories about Ben is as he was getting better, Ben was not great as a junior player. He was good and he was athletic and you could see all these things, but it's not like his results were tearing it up. And he went to Brian at one point and said, Dad, can I start playing the ITF? Travel all over the world and play the ITF? Brian looked at him and said, Ben, you're not even the best player in Florida. Don't you worry about being the best player in Florida first. When you become the best player in Florida, come back and we'll talk about you going to the ITFs. And as it turns out, when he went to Australia and made that run there, it was the first time he'd ever been overseas. First time he'd ever had a passport to leave the country.
Well, and when he had the magical run to close out the match to win the national title for the University of Florida, he really should have been a high school senior, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, correct. And then the next, that year, Sam Riffis wins the individual title, and then the next year, Ben wins the individual title. And so, it's like I told those guys that night after we all got together. It was a very interesting night, the night we won the national championship, because the match, I think, was supposed to start at 7 or 7:30, and we didn't get on the court until after the girls' match finished. It was closer to 9:15, 9:30ish, and so that match didn't end until somewhere around midnight, either slightly before or after midnight. There's a couple of things I remember vividly. One is Gator Nation never left that night. Those people had a 2-hour drive home, and not one single person left. They were there to see that thing through if it was the last thing that they did, and they made a difference. And the other thing is when we finally got back to the hotel closer to 1:15, and as a group, we had a bite to eat, and we met. And I told those guys that night, which I really believe even to this day, when you are able to accomplish something for the first time that no one else has been able to accomplish over a lifetime, that's just something that's special beyond special. And this group they're going to end up going into the Florida Hall of Fame. These guys will already are in each other's weddings. These guys will be tight for the rest of their lives off of this single evening, this single event. And it's not just a single event, it's all the time and effort that went into it to get to that point. So
Yeah, you mentioned Cam Nory, number 15 in the world. I mean, for people to play 15 ATP matches, I coached a lot of kids, been top 10 in the NCAAs. They didn't play 10 matches on the ATP or WTA circuit. So difficult just to make a college team, but let alone win a national title. I mean, that's not something that happens very easily.
Well, and at Florida, I mean, you think of the University of Florida, you think that they should be really good in golf and tennis. Those two outdoor sports. You got an outdoor, you got the weather, you got everything. Well, there's a reason that Florida's only won one national team championship in tennis. Is it's not easy. It's not easy at all. But so that was a special period of time, and especially for me, that was in Lake Nona. So our son Sammy was there, my wife Cindy was there, and to be able to share it with them is something that all three of us will remember for a long time. So
our first podcast with you was just like a day or two after you had won it. So
right,
I saw it live. So there was
right. You saw it live, and you called me the next morning to make sure I'd be on that podcast. I remember it vividly. And you told me that we were going to do 3 hours. And I said, nobody wants to hear me talk for 3 hours. You you can do 3 hours. I said, Smitty, we'll do 2. Yeah, okay. Well, I remember you got about 2.5 out of me. Like only you can. Yeah.
With his game today, he's under a microscope. I sent you a text the other night where you were out on a team function, but I said, you're watching Big Ben. Matt Flores told me that, he's on the public stage, that he's a great kid, great competitor. He said that he's so competitive. I mean, it makes it really even tough to coach him. I think we've all met kids like that. They're just so competitive. What's your comment on that?
The thing that I loved about Benny is the dude has to win every race, every game, every match. The dude is driven like practice. I mean, we would just have a sprint. You're going to run a 6 back and forth on the line. He'd have to win. We'd be in the weight room just warming up in the morning. He'd have to win. I mean, you see this drive. I don't care whether it's playing cards, whether it's tennis, whether it's basketball, whether it's throwing the football. It doesn't make any difference. This kid is uber competitive, and he's a freak of an athlete, and he's still growing, in my opinion. So the best is yet to come, and you add those two things, and then the knowledge and resource that his dad was able to bring to the table, along with Bill Tim, along with him being in a college campus and being able to be surrounded by all these other players. It was just a very perfect scenario for Ben to explode. And I thought I saw it coming, and people would call me on the carpet about it. And finally, I was at a wedding with some North Carolina guys a couple summers ago, and they just put it right to me. I mean, how good is this guy? And I said, I think he could be top 20, if not top 10. And you know, no one knows anything for sure, but all the intangibles to me are in line for Ben from the standpoint of he's not taken back by the big stage. It's almost quite to the contrary. He loves the big stage, and when he's at his best, he's having fun. And when he's having fun and he's dancing around like a world-class athlete, and the tennis is going on, I mean, you can see, come on, the guy, he doesn't have the best serve in tennis. He's got one of the top 2 or 3 best serves in tennis. And in the men's game now, as Vic Braden used to tell all of us, the first 2 points hit in every point in the history of the game are the serve and the returner serve. That's big. Well, he's got that first ball hit, and he in the history of the game and every point, and he's maybe one of the best, if not the best in the world at that particular shot. So
We use
I mean,
go ahead.
yep. No, I mean, he's going to be, I mean, if you can't break his serve, it becomes difficult to beat the guy. I mean, I think there was a stat coming out of Australia, a ridiculous stat that when he made that run that he held serve like 72 times in a row, something crazy like that. Yeah, I'm a big Benny fan. I think he's great for tennis. I think he's great for American tennis. I think he's a big picture guy from the standpoint that he wants to make an impact in a really positive way, not only on the tennis world, but the world in general. And what he really gets down in Aces is he's wonderful with young kids. He's wonderful in a group setting. He's wonderful to walk into a room and light it up. And he's well-spoken kid. He's bright. He's friendly, and he's charismatic.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so
very marketable.
Yeah, he's the total package. He's just a guy that's a total package. And come on, I mean, his sponsorship. I mean, he's with On. He's with Polo. He's with Rolex. He's with Bose now. I mean, he is getting the very top sponsorships of any American that I could hope for.
Who's his agent?
His agent
is it
Tony. No, it's Tony Gotzik is his agent.
Yeah, it's Team 8, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Team 8, yeah. And then I mean that's the inside the Federer and everything else. So Benny's just, he's the type of guy that if you're able to spend time with him, it's going to be thoroughly enjoyable. I've never had a bad time around Ben Shelton, and we've had some tough moments together, but it's like I was able to work with him when he won a couple of those, the fall IPA championship. Brian had to leave, so I was with him for the quarter, semis, and finals. And I told Brian after the tournament, and I still feel this way to this day, coaching Benny Shelton is like riding Secretariat. You have the greatest horse of all time. Just get on there and ride, and if he needs you, he'll ask. Otherwise, just keep your mouth shut and enjoy the ride. And that's what it was like. And yeah, there were a couple of moments where something, you could give a little advice or, help. But for the most part, Benny to me, is Secretariat. And so time will tell. I mean, you never know. I mean, but I think if he stays healthy, he's going to have a hell of a career. He'll be somebody that American tennis will talk about for a long time.
Let me back up on a couple of these comments. A good answer I read in Sports Illustrated one time was, when someone asks you who's the best athlete of all time, the answer is Secretariat.
Yeah.
With Jim Lair is always preaching sense of enjoyment. We were talking to this young player from France who's here today, and I said, "Come on, heck, can you smile? Can you have a little bit of fun on the tennis court?" But yeah, so no stage fright, and it's not like he grew up, being on the stage at the 12 and unders and 14 and unders. But certainly that was a major step up to go from. I went over to the USTA National Campus because I had a place just a few miles from there at one point, and I got really hijacked by a tennis mom. But I went over there on the purpose of watching him play. I just saw him play a little bit, but when I first saw him play, he was just it seemed like he was just a raw athlete getting going.
I would say that's definitely true. So you had an unbelievable athlete that's uber competitive, that got unbelievably good training through his dad and built him, and I mean he had access to the right people to help him fundamentally, and I think that the result is what you're seeing. So
let me
go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'll throw this in with Vic Braden. You used to, in fact, we talked a little bit about the Vic Braden reunion, the dinner they had. So you mentioned Tom Gullickson. Tim Gullickson's name came up, and I said, well, I was used as a hitter when Vic was working with Tim Gullickson. And the way it worked out, Vic spent more time working with me, and he said to my serve, he said, Steve, you're rubbing your chest against the cement. And Braden's line was, your serve is a pea shooter. You need a bazooka gun. And he does start the point so well. But let me ask you a question in regard to his development, which ties in with some questions that were sent in to ask you. What about him playing doubles? If you were a fly on the wall, or if it was like your vote, and obviously I know he has such great admirations for his dad, and now it's tough to play both, the speed of the ball and hard courts. But what do you think about him being a doubles player?
Well, I think for the most part, I'm in agreement with Brian on the doubles piece, from the standpoint that the more Ben can serve and volley and work on his return, the better it's going to help his singles, in my opinion. I think the weeks where Ben gets beaten early in singles and yet is able to stay in the tournament by getting out in the draw in doubles is really helpful. But I think also, and I think Brian agrees, that when you get to the Grand Slams, you got to really monitor that a lot closer. Because if you're going to win a slam, which I think we all think Ben is capable of, he's gotten stuck a couple of times where he's ended up having to go back on a day that should have been a day off to play a doubles match. And consequently, you don't get the day off and you don't get the rest. And I think if you get out in the draw, that can come back to grab you a little bit. And I once had this conversation with Jim Courier when I was coaching Chris Woodruff. Courier took Woodruff under his wing. And we spent a lot of time with him and Jose Higueras out in Palm Springs. But one of the things that Jim used to talk about all the time were how important it was at the slams to be able to get that day of rest in between matches. And when the schedule went off, if somebody got stuck having to play like the round of 16 and the quarters back to back, or the quarter and the semi back to back, that it was a difference maker. Don't kid yourself. Especially when you're going 3 out of 5 and you end up going the distance a couple of times back to back. It's a little hard to, get out of bed the next day, get you on and on and on. And so I think the concept of, serving more, working on your serve and volley, working on the return, staying in the turn. I think what the good part overrides why not to play. But like I said, I think in the bigger events, you're going to monitor that just a little closer.
I can see that would be a very good formula. Obviously, people would be lining up to play doubles with him. I know Austin Krajcek, who I've known since he was 7 years old. Dojic, his partner, recently retired, and yeah, there'd be a long line of people who would want to play doubles with Ben Shelton just because of the serve. Remember years ago, it was Pete Sampras, I think it was definitely against Safin, but I believe he lost 2 US Open finals because at the Open they changed it where the semis way back when they were on Friday for the men, but then they had the Super Saturday. So the last 2 days, that really hurt Pete. I believe it was 2 finals that he had to play back to back.
Well, I think that's a legitimate concern. I mean, it's like running a marathon. Especially if you go the distance. I mean, you're out there 3.5, 4 hours, 4 hours plus. It's just tough to turn around and do that. And the other side of it is, they only play those 3 out of 5 sets basically 4 times a year. So it's not like you're getting week in and week out the ability to acclimate to something like that. So I took it to heart. And I'm telling you, I've really come to enjoy Jim Courier as a commentator. I think the guy is borderline brilliant in so many ways. And, you go back to that time he won the French and he gives the speech in French to everybody there. He's got great insight. One of the other things that he said to me that stuck, and our son was just being born in 1996 when I was out with Woodruff and spending time with him, is he convinced me that our son should access both sides of his brain by doing different things with his right and left hand. For instance, our son plays tennis, writes, and eats with his left hand, does everything else with his right hand. And that's all because I got that concept from Courier. And he convinced me that made a ton of sense. And I still believe to this day it makes a ton of sense.
Well, I think is he learning another language, playing an instrument?
Exactly. Early on. Yeah, exactly.
I spent time with Audra, his sister. I coached just briefly, Jordan and Danielle. Danielle, I said, Danielle, you have more talent than your uncle. But she was playing. she was playing all these sports, and I think she, I can guess that she played at Oregon. But I remember Audra going on a tangent about Jim Courier. When he played his first tournament, lost, he cried for 3 days. That's what you can't teach. It's like you're talking about with the Shelton competition, Ben Shelton. Let me ask this while we're talking about doubles. I know the University of Florida won some titles on the women's side, but Lisa Raymond, the way she played doubles, what do you think of now in women's tennis, but it's getting more and more so? What do you think of the one up, one back? I mean, where do you stand on that?
I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah.
I'm just not a huge fan. I mean, too often now the game has gone to that. I mean, part of it, I really think it stems around people's inability to volley or volley well or be able to handle a fastball coming right at them. And, the rackets and the balls have gotten faster. The athletes have gotten better. So, if you're up at the net and you can't volley, you're in trouble in doubles. And then, so here's the beginning of our run up and run back and run up and run back and run up and run back. I've asked several coaches recently, if you were to start somebody from scratch at a young age, 5, 6 years old, how would you start them? Inside the service box or behind the baseline? and that goes to my thinking would be inside the service line, and let's start working on taking the ball out of the air to volley to start with, and then we'll move back from there, because what I've seen is the volley for the most part is a lost art, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just
Lisa,
not many guys who are comfortable up there.
Lisa Raymond, I think she played 2 years, won the NCAAs twice. I did some things for Utah Tennis Association. So I was with Andy Brandy and the team. I saw her actually play with a high altitude. I think she only lost just a couple matches, but I saw her lose once. But with her, the Bryan brothers, from your days on the tour, they spent, or they would put all their money in the same account. But I think it was Bob Bryant would say, no, it's not 50-50 because I played with money. They called Lisa Raymond money. But if I was a coach at the University of Florida on the women's side, I would say, okay, first thing we're going to do is we'd watch films of Lisa Raymond playing doubles. Go with the best and forget the rest. But it's hard for me to fathom, if you have a really aggressive partner, court's 36 feet wide, you should really only have to cover about 15 feet when you serve and volley if your partner's aggressive at the net. Now, if you serve like I did, what Brady used to say, it's like throwing up a grenade.
Right. You throw in the grenade and get it. You run under it.
The grenade and run underneath it. Tell us about Matt Clore. We'll pump his tires. You got to meet Matt through your time at the University of Florida.
Yeah, well, I met Matt some before that, but not a lot, and had not been able to spend that much time. What I said when we hired Matt was that his hire was not a home run; it was an absolute grand slam. And 2 years working with him for 2 years, I feel that comment was spot on. Probably one of the best young teachers and players of the game that I think we have in the country. A guy that knows the analytics side of the game inside out. A guy that loves to be on the court. A guy that can still beat almost everybody that played for us at Florida at the time. And wonderful family man. His wife introduced their kids to Cindy and I. This is her traveling circus. So they have 4 kids now. I think that they're under 13 or under. And Lauren, his wife, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And Cindy and I wanted to do everything we could in this past year to be able to support her and the kids and Matt. And Cindy ended up going to a lot of appointments with her. And Matt and I had a lot of heart-to-heart conversations and just about life and the kids and everything. And so it's a friend of mine said there's a greater good often in life. And if you can find the greater good, that's a wonderful place to be. And, just being able to be with the Clores and the kids and Matt and her in the last 2 years for me to work with Matt, it's just been a wonderful experience and something I'm going to cherish the rest of my life. And Matt and I still talk almost on a daily basis. So it's just good stuff. He's one of those guys that's just honest, upfront, and he loves the game of tennis. I mean, as you know, this dude will shadow swing all day and half the night. He'll get up on the court at 5:30 in the morning or 5:30 at night. I mean, he's constantly stretching and working out himself. He's just he's a special dude, just in so many ways. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Working with him.
It reminds me of. I saw the name with the Olympics being on. And a side note with the Olympics, someone sent me a note and said I should be so proud that I have 2 students that are in the Olympics, Austin Krychek and Rajiv Ram, and I had 0 to do with Rajiv Ram. He did work with one of our students for a semester at Illinois, Craig Tiley. But here is an Olympian, Anna Hall, and I read where she was, I don't know if she still is, but boyfriend, girlfriend with Ben Shelton. So Ben Shelton's been on the road. He shows back up, and Matt's son, Cohen, says, hey, Ben, great to see you. And Cohen just goes up, hey, Ben, where's your girlfriend?
That's Cohen. That's Cohen. Yeah. Since then, unfortunately, they've broken up, but they were a power couple here on the campus at UF for a while. I mean, come on. who wouldn't have, if they ended up getting married and had children, I would have given out scholarship before the kid was even born.
No,
I mean, two pure stallions. She's unbelievable herself, and obviously as an athlete, you can see what she's accomplishing and what he does. But yeah, two wonderful young people that made an impact. That's the other thing about the Florida campus is, you go in to lunch in the dining hall and you're surrounded by Olympians, other All-Americans, the swimming, the track and field stuff is off the charts. And one of the joys about the 12 years there was not only the success that we were able to have in tennis, but the success they have in nearly every sport across the board there. And they're winning national championships in nearly every sport at one point or another.
No, I remember taking some players up there to just see a college campus, see a college match, and you told me at that time that you were rebuilding and your team was 21 in the country and it was the lowest ranked sport on campus.
That was the truth. That was the truth.
You can do this on podcasts. I've actually communicated with Adam Steinberg, who's the new hire at Florida, and he offered. This is 20 years ago. That's the only really time I really interacted with Adam. Is he hired one of our students to be his volunteer, but the volunteer had to get a work visa, and it didn't work out. So, umpteen years later, the coach had been very successful in the private sector, and he asked me to reach out to Adam Steinberg, and I said, "Hey, there's a guy that you went through. You went through his resume, you went through his background, all his references, and you offer him a job. If the job's not taken, would you communicate with him?" So they did communicate, and I'm all for Adam Steinberg. I mean, I know he won a title out in Pepperdine, but the AD, his last name is Strickland. I can't remember his first name, but was it John Strickland? Scott Strickland.
Yeah.
My communication with him was hire the best teacher. And if you think about college coaches of any sport, I mean, typically the legendary coaches are the best teachers. What were your thoughts on him? Now you're not at Florida anymore, and Matt's back at the USTA. What are your thoughts on that not going Matt's way?
Well, I mean, I think both Brian and I supported Matt, and we did everything we could. And I think Matt interviewed like a champion, and it wasn't meant to be. And I mean, I think we're both forever grateful for the opportunity that Coach Steinberg, Adam, gave us to stay on. And I think we both worked our panties off. And one of the things I keep telling Matt is, I mean, the last 2 years, the one was with Brian and then the one with Steiny. I mean, we basically just worked our panties off and ended up 500. And I told Matt that, in my mind, two guys like he and I working together, working nonstop, we should be able to accomplish a little bit more than 500, but that's the way it was. So, it was a good, it's for me, in all honesty. And I told Matt this, and I told Steiny this as well. It was just time for a change for my wife and I. I mean, we've been there 12 years. We didn't come there to retire. We didn't come there to live there the rest of our lives. We just came there with the intent to try to do everything we could to win a national championship, and we did. And we stayed a couple of years after that for all good reasons. And just time for change, time for a move, and this is why I feel really lucky and fortunate and blessed to have landed on my feet here, because this is a good little spot for me to make the last run. I think a lot of things are in place here for TCU to have sustained success in men's tennis, because a lot of the pieces to the puzzle are in place.
Well, Perl, you can't say last run. You're almost 70, so you got 30 more years.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'll tell you the funniest story. If my wife hears My wife Cindy hears me talk about 2 or 3 more years. Everything is at peace. There's a couple times, like if I was talking to you maybe on the side, she overheard me saying maybe 4 or 5. That hasn't gone over nearly as well as 2 or 3. So we'll see. But I'm still enjoying myself. I still feel like I got the energy and the drive, and I really enjoy working with guys this age. And I think, as you would probably attest to, is I think like fine wine, as we get older, we just get better, and so it's something that I still am really, really enjoying.
I was talking to you on the phone when your wife's mother passed away, and I remember telling you, tell your wife that if you could, you'd like to trade places. That you'd be gone and her mother would still be here. To remember her going, I love that idea. I love that idea.
Yeah, well, she often talks about paying Brian Shelton to put me on the road, either recruiting or take somebody somewhere. It's an extra couple hundred, coach, anytime you're willing to put him on the road. And she's already called Rodity. Yeah, you got any question about putting him on the road, call me, and I'll send you a little money, and we'll get him going. So,
Perl, let's do this. Let's talk Vic Braden, but go through Matt Clore. I mean, I would think that all the years Matt spent with us, that it just worked out. I spent a lot of years with Matt Clore, and the term we would use, he's a Bradenite. That he really understands Braden, and very few people really understand it like they should. I mean, the tennis math, the rationale. But don't you find yourself, when you talk to Matt Clore, going back to your Braden background, that when it comes down to, even someone like a Ben Shelton, that you can have a conversation with him that only you and him really understand?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, that's why I was so excited about Matt coming to Florida at the time, because I knew with the Braden background that he and I would think almost entirely alike, if not entirely alike. 90 to 95% of the thinking would be spot on. And that's the way it turned out. And so, working alongside Matt, teaching alongside Matt, it's very easy for me, because everything that came out of his mouth was basically Braden oriented, which I was trained in the exact same manner. So, and I think this is one of the great things about Vic, and all his stuff still holds up pretty darn well after all these years. And the other thing that I would say was on my mind about this little gathering they just had out at the Jack Kramer Club, actually it was yesterday, where a bunch of former coaches of Vic's came together.
Yeah.
The thing about Vic was and I think you would agree with this, he was probably the greatest giver as a human being, and maybe anybody, either one of us, has ever met in our lives. And he just would give and give and give to every single person. I never saw him really not give of himself for others. And he lived his life that way. And it was extraordinary, the amount of people that he's touched in his life, and in such a positive way. I mean, every one of us that worked for him who's walked away talking about this guy and it's just like somebody that special that you just doesn't come along very often. And the combination of his drive to learn and the video and the slow motion and breaking things down to reality versus feel, and everything that he was able to teach all of us is just allowed the rest of us. I know it's allowed me to succeed. I know what you've done in the Braden method and with him, and the dedication you've had to the system, and the amount of hours and people you've touched. It's phenomenal, to be honest with you. And it's spread throughout the world now, because of, people like yourself that have mentored guys that are not just teaching in the States, they're teaching in a ton of different countries. So, I mean, Vic, I hope as time goes on, he just gets recognized more and more and more for everything he did for so many of us. But he definitely made an impact, no question about it.
With on the first episode, our listeners with the Pearl, you mentioned some of the life lessons you learned from your parents, and one was the most important person you're talking to is the person who's right in front of you, the person you're talking to at that moment. But I think a principle from Braden, he used to always say, never forget the little guy. It's really interesting. You got to be authentic. You got to treat everybody the same. I know
got to be authentic.
Before we got on the air, I mentioned a line that I like is, and this ties in with, not people, okay, they're talking to somebody who's a VIP, very important person, and where they have their nose, the line goes, they've eaten so much human chocolate it tastes like vanilla. And but Vic didn't matter to Vic, but I can remember, I tell a story all the time, Manuel Santana. I've been in places where people haven't seen Vic in a long time, these famous people, because he ran the pro tour. And they come up, Vic Braden. And Vic, let's go out to lunch. I'll take you out to lunch right now. And I remember this young guy, Danny Cooper. We're both young at the time. And Vic said, gee, I'd love to, but I'm going to lunch with these guys. And then he goes, oh, we can all go to lunch. And Vic said, well, we got to go and really sort out some things because Danny Cooper is being set up to go to Europe. But creativity, Braden, his tennis facility is called the best tennis facility in creation by Braden. Coming back to Ben Shelton, I think, we have these mock lessons and people say, yeah, you guys go sit in section F and eat a hot dog. But, with Matt Clore being so humble, I say, all right, Clore, who wins this drill? And I think you could ask the same question with the Ben Shelton. You're going to play Matt. You're going to play with wooden rackets. You're going to serve underhand. And you only can play on half a court. And Clore goes, I like my chances.
I do too.
but I really think that's where, the game is so fast, but to just take that time and, it's like with Kyrgios, Ben Shelton's he's got to volley better with, how's it go with Ivan Isavic says, he goes, I'm serving no volley. And, Vic would say, there's times where you don't split step, and then people hear that and say, oh, you don't split step. But the way Shelton serves sometimes, he doesn't have to split step. That thing's just floating up there like a wounded duck. Here's a question for you. One of our students, it's a great story. They're from Knoxville, Tennessee. They came to see us. The youngest son, Jose Garcia, three boys. And then they never went to a tennis program after that. Paul Anicone's brother, Steve, I remember being at that pro tournament in Knoxville, and he said, I respect everything you have these guys doing, but how did you get them to do it? Shadow swing, put up mirrors, hit off a cone, drop hit.
Yeah.
But anyway, Jose Garcia, he's playing with Chris Woodruff. You coached Chris Woodruff on the tour for so many years. What do you think Chris Woodruff's going to do for one of our students as a coach at Tennessee?
Well, Chris runs a very disciplined, hardworking, straightforward type program. It's not a lot of, I don't think it's for everybody to play for him, because you got to be really dedicated, really hungry, really competitive, really willing to get up every day and put in phenomenal effort if you're going to be comfortable in that setting. And not everybody is willing to do that. I think Chris knows the game of tennis very, very well. He sees it well. He saw it well as a player. Another guy that's an extremely good athlete, because I remember Courier in a Sports Illustrated article saying Woodruff was the fastest guy on the tour.
I think he said I
which
think it was a little racial. He said he's the fastest white guy in the world.
I think that was, yeah, I think that was it. The fastest white guy in the tour, the fastest white guy in the world, whatever. But what I knew up until that point is from just watching was when the ball started getting exchanged quicker and quicker, Woodruff would win the majority of those points over and over again. And I wasn't quite ready to make that comment that Courier made, but he had a lot more experience as playing top level guys. But, so, I mean, this is one of the other things that when I start talking about, you know, guys that are going to make it in the game of tennis, that I'm a little bit more attracted to guys that are the high level athletes, because I think they just got a little bit of an edge, the movement side of it, the adjustment side of it, just everything. You give me or you an athlete to work with, and I think with the proper instruction and the proper training, that person is going to go further than just an average athlete. It's just my opinion. And, you know, you find tennis players that are come from all different kinds of spots and places and families, and some of them aren't that athletic that are pretty darn good tennis players. So that's not the only criteria for you being a good tennis player, but I think it helps a lot.
Perl, thanks. Here's a question for you. This gentleman, I may pronounce his name wrong. He played for you at Kansas. Sven Gruenfeld?
Yeah.
He's from the Netherlands. He was 826 in the world. So obviously, to get ATP points is not easy. But listen to this. He, at one time, was the head trainer for the Swiss Tennis Federation. Coached Monica Seles, Arantxa Sanchez Vicario, Mary Pierce, Anna Ivanovic, Caroline Wozniacki, Michael Steitz, Greg Rosetsky, Nicholas Kiefer, Tommy Haas. Your name's not on this list, Ivan. Ozerets. Maria Sharapova, Bianca Andreescu. Tell us about his connection to you and, you know, what he's done on the tour. I don't know very much about him, but he's coached a lot of players.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously he's had as good a run coaching players, probably as anybody, especially his age, I would think. And I mean, it speaks a lot to him that, I mean, he could coach successfully with so many different players, not only on the women's side, but on the men's side. My relationship with him started, he was at a university called Southwest Baptist, which was in the same region that the University of Kansas was in when I was coaching there. And he transferred over, I believe, as a junior to Kansas. So we had him there for 2 years. A good, solid player, guy that loved the game. He had a lot of charisma, unbelievable to get along with people, and just enormously proud of him, to be honest with you. I mean, we have not stayed in close touch. I have not spoken to him in a long time, but enormously happy for him, enormously proud of him, and just take my hat off to him.
With here's a side note, ties into a Vic Braden laugh. So Vic Braden's from Michigan, and remember the supermodel Christy Brinkley? She's our age, but she still looks like she's 25.
Yeah.
So she's from Michigan, and Vic was training coaches at the academy had twice a year. He's talking about genetics, and he told everybody, the audience, he said, and at that time she was the number one supermodel in the world. Everybody knew Christy Brinkley. And Vic said, well, I used to date her mother. And, we dated for a long time, but just think, if we married and Christy was my daughter, look at me, she wouldn't be a supermodel. So, but, there's a guy, that's one, but that's one thing about Vic was that any good comedian, he was a professional comedian, is what you need to do is, you need to make fun of yourself first.
Yeah.
With here's a question from Sam Garcia.
All right.
He said he just loves the Pearl. He gave me a few, but I'm going to go with this one. Describe your personal meetings outside of the Allen Fieldhouse at the University of Kansas with Sam Garcia.
Oh boy. Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. So let me tell you how I met Sammy Garcia. So we were playing they used to have a fall clay court event in Panama City, Florida. And we go there, and Sam is either the head pro or the assistant pro there at the time. And he's in charge of stringing rackets. And I mean, he comes to work every day with a shirt and tie on. And I mean, this dude is pumping out rackets at night like no human being should. Never complained at all. Just showed up the next morning. The rackets were strong. He's got the shirt and tie on again. He's greeting you when you come through the door. On and on and on. And so I decided that I was looking for an assistant. And so I offered him the job, and he came. And the pay was minimal, if even existent at all. And a lot of these conversations he's talking about is he would call me. We'd go out into Allen Fieldhouse where the office was. We'd sit out in the arena, and he'd start taking me through just how much he was getting paid per hour for all the hours he was working. And he really expected, I think, some empathy, some sympathy. I don't know what he was looking for, but he didn't get anything close to that. And it's made an everlasting impression on his mind. And he loves telling the story. But in the end, let me just tell you, Sam Garcia has gone on to be a very, very successful teaching pro, director of tennis, running a pro shop at a very high-end place in Vero Beach. So Sammy's done well for himself. Proud of him as well.
Yeah, Tennis Techer, what a class act. Yeah, he's one of those clubs where there's one segment of the facility is where you go have dinner, then there's another setup where that's where you park your boat, and there's another setup where you hit golf balls, and another setup where you hit tennis balls. Yeah, Sam Garcia.
They got their own chef. I mean, they age their own beef at the club. I mean, it's an unbelievable place. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah.
But he would say that I'd have those meetings with the Pearl, or he'd say, Sammy, let's go outside, and then that's where you plug it, you hit the switch with the instant hostility.
Yeah, the instant hostility. Yeah, he thought that I should feel sorry for him, or I should feel badly that and I mean, the way he used to break it down, I've worked 53 hours, and and I that comes out to about $2.12 an hour. Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good, Sam.
You're overpaid. Here's one from Dave Anderson, who he trained him when just like Sam, he was a classmate of Sam Garcia's. Ask him about recruiting Ty Tucker. I was with him. We were in Dallas. It was indoor. It was 18s. I remember watching young 18-year-old Ty Tucker beat. It was Byron Black, 7.660, and you were just like drooling the genetics. I'm getting this guy to go to Kansas. So that was a question I asked the Pearl. Ty Tucker, the recruit. I know you're friends, and you got him to come to Kansas 100 years ago, right?
Well, Ty and I just spent 2.5 hours together a couple of weeks ago at the junior clay court tournament, and this subject actually came up about me recruiting him out of high school or out of the juniors. And I remember that match. I remember where we were, and Ty ended up telling me just recently that a lot of people backed away from him and all the different academies that he had gotten thrown out of for one reason or another, all this stuff. But what he remembered was I never backed away. I couldn't get him to come to Kansas. And he went to Ohio State. And when he got the job there, Ohio State. The one piece that I didn't figure into it was his love for the University of Ohio State and his discipline to run a program and teach the game of tennis. I mean, this guy just loves being on the court day in and day out, night in and night out. Your son played for him. He can speak to.
Yeah, no, I love Ty Tucker. The Ty Tucker should. Oh, we the Big Ten. What he's done in the Big Ten. One of our students, Tylee, he went about it a different way. But we've always said if you could take both those programs and put them together, that should be the USTA Player Development Program. But Luke Jensen, another Michigander, he said to me one time, I went to his place for 3 days just to hang out. I wrote an article on his program. And it worked out because Syracuse was right by where my mother was in a home for extended care. And Luke Jensen said about Ty Tucker, the player, could not play for Ty Tucker, the coach. But here's a great line with Ty Tucker. I went to quite a few matches when my son was playing there, and the team would go out to dinner, and I say, "Hey, coach, you're coming with us." So the other parents weren't going to dinner, so I was going to dinner, and my son kind of goes, "This is kind of unusual. Why is my dad in on this?" And I didn't know any better. So the associate AD at that time, I said, when you hired Ty, I said, he was maybe one or two moves away from, at a young age, coaching the Ohio State. But John Daly had resigned in January, so he was in on as the interim coach. But this is a great story as far as interviews I tell it all the time, is that the associate AD told me this. They asked Ty Tucker, said, well, if you don't get this job at Ohio State, what are you going to do? He said, I'll mow lawns at Ohio State. One way or the other, I'm going to work at Ohio State. And then they left. He left the room, and he had the job. All right, let me go on to Paul Showers. This is my favorite question, and there's quite a few of them here. Why did the Perl return serve with a T2000 and serve with a Jack Kramer?
He's the only one that can ask a question like that. That's all I can tell you. Yeah. So Paulie grew up in Monroe, and Paulie. This
is from Bob.
Oh, Bobby. Bobby grew up in Monroe, and Bobby remembers everything about us playing as juniors that you can imagine. But he's one of the original guys that was there. We grew up playing for this Mr. Alto, who was a counselor at the high school, and he was the one that got all of us started. I mean, Monroe, like with Vic Braden, I mean, the history of players and the amount of players that came out of a little town like Monroe is ridiculous. And it all gets traced back to this guy, Lawrence Alto, who was a high school counselor, who his thinking was he used to go up and down the honor roll looking for potential tennis players, because he thought if you were a bright student, you would be more apt to be a bright tennis player. And so he was plucking guys out of the honor roll and inviting them. And he was the guy that when Vic was hitting balls over the fence, and he was the guy that said, come on out and play. And so we were all touched by this guy, Lawrence Alto. And it was not like fundamentally he was the greatest teacher of all time, but his enthusiasm and love for the game and the way he got us all involved and going to tournaments and passed on his love to the game to I don't know how many hundreds of kids that have gone on, and a lot of us have gone on to make a living in the game of tennis. So,
with listening to your last podcast with us, you were telling a story about Lawrence Alto, but then his son Larry was in on it as well, huh?
Right, Larry took over, and it's funny you bring him up too, because I tried to reach out to him in the last 12 or 14 months, and I've lost track of him a little bit. But as Mr. Alto faded out, which is kind of when I was more in high school, coming out of junior, then his son Larry started taking over the summer program and was, equally as good a teacher. equally as good a guy and equally had that same love for the game. And so, yeah, I was touched by him as well. So, I mean, that's one of the positive things. And I would think you would say the same thing about yourself. I mean, we were both fortunate in so many ways to be touched by so many good people along the way. And that's how it allows us to be able to do what we've been able to do to this day. I mean, no one does it by themselves, as you know.
This is before cell phones, but Vic was in Detroit. My kids were playing ice hockey, so I was in Detroit. And he spoke 3 times. And so I spent the weekend with him. And we went to Monroe to see his sister. One of his sisters was in the hospital. So we pull up. We're in Monroe. We come off the freeway and see Steve, pull over here. And we run out of the car, and he goes, "This is where it all started." That's where he was caught stealing balls, and he saw these straight tennis balls. Hey kid, you can either learn how to play tennis, or I'm going to take you to jail. And that's how he got his start in tennis. With another question from Bob Showers. I've got endless from Paul Showers, but Bob Showers, you played your brother in a college tennis match.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I mean, how many brothers played in a college tennis match? Another one was
not very often.
From a small town. But this guy really knows just to have the Perl describe a typical day. This goes back to Sammy Garcia. When you were 26 years old and you're coaching 2 teams at the University of Kansas.
Ooh. Well, just to backtrack a little bit, I beat my brother 6-6 in a very tight match.
Oh, okay.
He remembers it like it was yesterday. It was back when you had the 9-point tiebreaker. What was a day like when I was 20? I can tell you, through the winter, one team, the women's team, would practice from 6 to 8 in the morning. And then the men's team would practice from 10 to 12 at night. And I would get home at about 1. I'd sleep from 1 to 5. After the women's practice, I'd go home, take a shower, come back in the office, and run 5 or 6 miles at noon. And that went on for like 10 weeks because there was only 4 indoor courts in the whole town of Lawrence, Kansas. So the only way we could have the facility to practice, have all 4 courts, were to go at those hours, 6 to 8 in the morning and 10 to 12 at night. So I did that. I had both teams for the first 5.5 years I was there, and then we hired a full-time women's coach. So yeah, I mean, back when you're 26, I mean, I didn't even think twice of it. I've gone back through stuff here when I just moved. There were a couple of years where I had 26 guys on the men's team, 26 guys, and I just had the thought that the cream would rise to the top. And out of those 26 guys, there were a couple All-Americans that came out of that group. So the concept was good, but the work that it took to get there was just phenomenal. But back then, I didn't even think twice about it. I had both teams. I was just going hard.
Well, that when you told Sammy Garcia, or he told you he's working for 52 cents an hour, you just needed to say, well, I used to work for 5 cents an hour.
Yeah, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Love the game. Last one from Bob Showers. How's recruiting changed in your 40 years plus in tennis?
Oh, I mean, right now, recently, it's just changed drastically with this whole NIL thing. I mean, it's just, I can't even describe to you now because, guys are getting, offers like a 4th-year guy, let's say he played 4 years at TCU, that's had a good career, that is now willing to go somewhere else for a 5th year. I mean, these guys are getting offered between $75,000 and $200,000 to show up for 1 year with supposedly NIL money. I don't know how you can say that's name, image, and likeness when a kid has never been on campus, has never played a match. No one knows their name, image, and likeness. So to me, it breaks down more like pay for play. And this is what we've tried to get out of college athletics my whole lifetime, was trying to take cash out of college athletics. I mean, I remember the days of SMU and the death penalty. And was cash out of college athletics altogether? The answer is probably no. I'm not that naive to think it was, but it had changed drastically for the good. And now it's suddenly, in a short period of time, cash has basically been inserted back into the formula. And it no longer, from what I can see, what I'm observing, it's no longer about the school and the university and its academics and its coaching staff as much as it is about the NIL dollar. And what I see time after time now is if one school offers 50,000, another school offers 75,000, and a third school offers 100,000, player after player is going to where the biggest offer is coming from. So it's changed the landscape totally. I mean, it's basically becoming semi-pro sport, if not professional sport. And I mean, as a coach now, you're going to have a payroll. And I mean, there's just the amateur side of college sports has just disappeared. And so times are changing, and unless you're willing to roll with the change, it's probably time to get out. But the landscape is much different now than it's ever been. So the change in recruiting, especially now, has been drastic.
Perl, if that's the money for big-time tennis schools, what about big-time football and basketball? That just must add some zeros to it, right?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you followed it or not, but when I was at Florida, they offered a quarterback $13 million to come, and the thing ended up falling through, and it didn't happen. But I mean, come on, $13 million for a 17 or 18-year-old kid to come play football at the University of Florida? It's outrageous to me.
Remind our listeners, what was the SMU death penalty?
SMU, they got caught cheating, so they shut down the whole athletic department.
For a year or a couple of years, or
I think it was for a couple of years. I mean, they got plastered. I don't remember like all the details, except I remember they got the death penalty. It was a major deal then, because they were running around giving cash to football players one after another, and they got caught, and it was several times they got caught. And so at the time they called it the death penalty. I believe they shut the whole department down.
Pearls, we're going to go from the older brother to the younger brother, Paul Showers. I love this question. This is my second favorite question. Rolla Anderson called you for a foot fault. What was your reaction?
It wasn't good. Yeah, it wasn't good.
Was it instant? Was it instant hostility?
It was instant hostility, and to show you my ignorance at that time, and how naive I was, I screamed to Billy Richards, who is this ass blank, and he ends up dressing me down after the match, telling me that Rolla Anderson was running the boys' national tournament for years, and he was one of the more prominent people in all the game of junior tennis. And he's from Kalamazoo, and Billy Richards, the coach at Ball State, was from Kalamazoo, and then I had thoroughly embarrassed him, and it was not a good moment for the young player Scott Perelmen at the moment at all. So yeah, that only he could remember that. But that was not one of the proud moments. But it did happen for
No,
sure.
no. We all have moments like that.
Yeah.
Another question for Paul is, what did you learn from Coach Bill Richards?
Oh my gosh. This is another guy that's just been so prominent of a figure in my life since I was 17 years old. I've learned a lot of things from him, but most of all, I mean, I think my dad was a man of integrity, and I think Bill Richards is a man of complete integrity. And I was his first recruiting class in 1973. He's still doing it. He tells us this is going to be his last year. But it's not only me, and it's not only Billy, it's his wife, Sue. I mean, they've touched so many young people in such a positive way. It's a beautiful thing.
So he hasn't retired yet.
He has not retired yet. I think this is year 52 or 53. And the most joyful thing, Smitty, is when Ball State has a men's tennis reunion. There are over 100 guys in the room nowadays.
Wow.
It's over 100 guys in the room. I mean, I don't know anybody else in the country that's been able to have one coach stay in one place all those years and have such a significant impact. I think Bill Richards is the winningest coach in the history of the Mid-American Conference in all sports. He's also received I don't know what they call it, but it's like the most distinguished person that on campus or works on campus. I mean, he's been a part of winning a ton of conference championships back to back to back to back. I mean, the guy has done it all, and he's just been one of those guys. Even to this day, if I have to make an important decision, whether it's personal or professional, I don't make decisions of that nature without talking to Bill Richards. I mean, that's how that guy has impacted me. I'm 68 years old now, and it's still a voice that I trust, that I believe. And the thing about this guy, Bill Richards, is he always has your best interest in mind versus his best interest. He's looked out, and so is his wife, Sue. They both have looked out for a ton of us guys that went there and played, and they continue to care about us to this day. So, I mean, it's beyond special what this guy has done, in all honesty.
Well, thanks for that answer. What about Tommy Warfel? Didn't he play was he there when you were there? Didn't he play?
Yeah, Tommy was on the team. Tommy was another guy that was pretty significant in me getting out to Vic Braden's, because when he played on the team, I think he was a senior when I was a freshman, but then he went and worked for Vic. And when I finally got on, or was trying to get hired with Vic, I slept. Tommy Warfel rented a room from a lady, and I slept on his floor and rode up Tribuco Canyon to work every day with him for 30 straight days. And,
Tommy Warfel was at that gathering, the party for Vic. One of his claims to fame in the 12s, he beat Jimmy Connors. But I guess now he's playing a lot of pickleball. But what a great guy.
What great guy, great tennis player, just a great human being, and somebody that just, I mean, this guy still reaches out once, twice a year. We tell stories and we laugh and we giggle, but it's just like that same thing. It's this Ball State connection. I mean, even to this day, if I'm traveling somewhere and meet a new coach, a new person in tennis, and they say they played for Bill Richards or they played at Ball State for Bill Richards, I mean, there's an instant connection there.
Tommy Warfel, somebody I'd love to reconnect with is the mean guy, John Passion from Monroe. He came down to our program, learned to teach tennis, but I used to call him the mean guy. He didn't have a mean bone in his body. We worked at a summer camp together, and I said, mean guy, where's your group? He goes, I don't know, coach, I lost him.
Let me just help you. It's a lot of years later, and he hasn't changed at all.
But Tommy Warfel's like a guy. No instant hostility there. No, there's not going to be a mean comment coming from Tommy Warfel. Here's one. Paul Shower says Perl is great at helping people with confidence, and how much does that help you help them make changes? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that's so important with people is when they know you believe in them, and they know that you care about them, and that building a relationship like that, in my opinion, can't just be done on the tennis court. It's done before the lesson, after the lesson, before the practice, after the practice. And I have always tried to, it's funny you bring this up because having moved, I just went through some boxes, and I have files to this day on every player that played for me at the University of Kansas, men or women, their name, the year they showed up, and a file of whatever they accomplished there, whatever happened to them while they were in school. Now, Smitty, this is 81 to 91, 82 to 92. I mean, I should be able to throw this stuff away, but I just can't do it. And I don't know it. Why? I mean, one of them might show up at the house at some point, and I pull out the file, and we all laugh and giggle. But the part about relationships is, honestly, that just ties almost the coaching career together for me, because I've always thought that was important from the first day I started, and I probably got that from my mom and dad being school teachers, and my dad with the comment about, the person that's sitting in front of you is the most important person in the world. So pay attention and don't be distracted. So, and I've always been inquisitive. So I like asking questions, and I like finding out and learning from others. So by doing some of that stuff with your players, you develop a relationship that some of them have lasted a lifetime. So it's been fun.
So for our listeners, the Perl sent me a photo, a text, and it was a photo. It just said Tyler Junior College, Tennis Tech, 1984. So that was Perl 40 years ago, but you still have the audio tape. So people would come in for a weekend. We have one person every month. So we have 9 speakers for the year. And so a couple of times you did our team coaching. I remember we had Jim Verdict do it as well. But what's your recollection from that weekend? 40 years ago.
Well, I mean, it was always been fun. I mean, you and I go back a long, long ways, probably longer than most people will want to admit to. But I've always respected what you were doing for Vic and trying to spread the word. And I remember you and I used to talk often, and we were his generals.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity to come down and speak to people that wanted to coach and wanted to get into tennis, that wanted to teach tennis, I found it pretty exciting. And like you said, that's probably where you started in calling me the Richard Pryor of teaching tennis.
Good humor, baby.
Yeah. I'm sure if we listen to those tapes right now, they may have to be rendered to be R rather than GP.
Yeah, they wouldn't be PC, politically correct. I remember things. Total Recall. I recall totally want to. Jamie Cobb said, "Hey, Coach Perelmen, do you have any stories to tell?" And I get this, Smitty, shut the door.
Yeah, that's it. That's spot on. So yeah.
Here's another question from Paul or Bob. Yeah, Paul Showers now. Does the Perl follow social media, and what do you think of social media and its impact on athletes?
Yeah, I do not follow social media at all. I'm not on social media at all. My wife is on social media probably every single day. And so she'll share some things with me or share something that she sees about one of the former players or current players. What do I think about it? I just think I think the cell phone in general and social media in specific has just changed the dynamics of, of, of how young people live. And so it's had a huge impact, for the better in some ways and probably for the worse in some ways. But I think, like, let me tell you a Benny Shelton story. When Benny was in college, he never said no to anyone that made a social media request to him. So if you reached out to Ben Shelton one way or another, he accepted your request and replied to you, to the point that Bill Richards, my coach in college, who we were just talking about, his grandson had reached out to Ben Shelton just as a kid that liked to play tennis from Muncie, Indiana. And Ben had responded. And then when Ben was playing in the finals of the NCAA tournament in Champaign, Illinois, Billy brought his grandson to the match. And afterwards, after Benny won, I was able to introduce the two of them. Ben shook his hand, signed the autograph, and the whole thing. But this is that's one of the great things about a young guy like Ben Shelton. I mean, that's where he gets the big picture. From the time before he even knew that he was going to be this good, he was reaching out and letting people in and having conversations with young people to try to inspire them into the game of tennis. So, good little side story for you.
No, thanks. Ben Shelton certainly honors the Vic Braden motto, laugh and win. Guy's always got a smile on his face. With younger, Paul Showers played at Kalamazoo College like Vic. He's asking, what's the Pearl's favorite books?
What's the book of Pearl's favorite books? I like autobiographies, to be honest with you. So I like reading anything about people, like either whether it's a politician or an athlete, and just getting into the weeds about their lives and how they were able to get to where they were and everything they had to overcome and those types of things. I like along those same lines, whether it's a politician or an athlete, somebody that's been in the public eye. Those are the kind of the books that I've been attracted to. My mom and dad were prolific readers. They read every single night. There was always a book by the bedstand. I am not a prolific reader. I have to get excited. I can get excited about the first 20 or 30 pages. I can finish the book. If I don't get excited, I'll tend to not finish something. So I could do better at that, for sure.
Pearl, here's a great question. I don't really like the 10-point tiebreaker, but normally, what do you tell a player who's playing a 10-point tiebreaker?
It's not as much of a sprint as you tend to think it is what I've learned about the 10-point tiebreaker. The shorter tiebreaker, there can't be that many momentum swings, in my opinion, and it's going to end. But in a 10-pointer, I mean, you can go down 4-0 and still have a chance. It initially struck me similar to the 7-point, winning at 7. That's just was more of a short thing, but the 10-pointer is a little bit more extended. So I think as far as a tiebreaker is concerned, it probably leads to the better player winning more often, I would think.
Here's one that I have a few more for Paul, but one for myself. One of your players from Kansas, Michael Wolf, he coached Jack Sock. One thing about Jack Sock, a lot of people don't realize he always played high school tennis. He always played his age group. I think in high school tennis, he was 80-0. What comes to your mind? You just had to say a few things about I mean, guy comes from Nebraska, and he goes. He wasn't really in a hotbed. He wasn't in California. He wasn't in Florida. What comes a few thoughts from your mind on that?
Well, he got yeah. Well, Mike had worked with Jack from a young age. I mean, they both were Missouri Valley guys. So, I mean, Mike knew of Jack from a young age, and they had a very close relationship. Mike's a great tennis mind. He changed the whole program around at the University of Kansas. I mean, he was our really big first recruit, and from there took Kansas, that was in the bottom of the conference, and tennis to the top of the conference, and basically put the place on the national map. So, I mean, Mike helped Jack a lot, I believe, and obviously Jack was an enormous talent, and I was able to watch the two of them work together. I think they worked well together. I think they're still working together. Jack's playing pickleball now for the New York team that Mike Wolf is coaching.
Wow. No kidding.
So, and here you're at, here's you are, fast forward all these years from the tennis side of it, and now they've hooked up again on the pickleball side of it. So,
but Jack,
nothing but good things to say about Mike from my standpoint.
But a competitor, I mean, it was obviously people wouldn't say that Jack Sock by any means is a refined tennis player, but just that compete level at an early age. Just wondered if you thought Michael Wolf had a lot to do with making him the competitor.
I think he had a lot to do with it. I mean, Wolf's a great competitor himself. So, I mean, that's the one thing that I think he got out of Jack better than anybody else that Jack has worked with. Is Mike knows the right buttons to push to get Jack to compete. And when Jack is locked in and competing, I think whether it's tennis or pickleball is when he's at his best.
Back to Paul Showers. Paul said that when he would see you with Woodruff, that you always had the yellow legal pad, and you're always writing things down. It's a twofold question. Why don't you think people are taking notes while they're watching a pro tour? And then what were the pearls of wisdom? What were you writing down for the most part? Key points.
Well, I don't know why. The only reason I would say people don't write things down now is where you're getting all these analytical reports. I mean, Brian Shelton is telling me that before a match, he can be presented anywhere from a 30 to 50 page report about the opponent now and everything they're doing and all their tendencies. I mean, back then, if I didn't write it down, we didn't have it. And I say we, Woodruff and I. So I kept notes and tried to hand chart every match he played, and then I would go back and put the statistics together, not only from his side of things but from the opponent's side of things. And so it was like that was the homework, that was the job. And things have changed drastically. I was trying to explain to somebody just recently. Back then you couldn't say anything out of the box, and so the camera never panned to the box that much when the match was on TV. And now they pan to the box almost every other point because they want to hear what's coming out of the box or the banter between the player and the box. So the only thing you were able to do at the pro level at that time was give your player, Woodruff, an initial scouting report and an initial game plan. And then from there, they had to make all the adjustments themselves. So all the notes I was taking and all the stats I was trying to put together was so post-match, we could sit down and just go through the match, he and I together. It's not point by point, game by game. And I'd have the facts in front of me instead of, what I thought happened. And that's part of what I also got from Braden. Get the facts. And you got to have the facts. You got to have charted the match. Otherwise, there's no way for you to have the stats like that. So That's what I was doing. So after every point, I would be right down first serve, second serve. How did the point? How did the point end? Was it an error? Was it a winner? And then at the end of the match, I'd go back and try to put it all together.
No, thanks. We're telling people all the time, juniors, the late Jim Verdict, just go to YouTube and chart 10 points a day. It's just a simple T chart, how the points ended, and, to actually watch tennis. I know Matt Clora, we talked about going back to the USTA. He's worked with Dave Ramos with analytics. People could go back and listen to Warren Pretorius so they're actually getting scouting reports on on key points. Where is their opponent generally served? That type of thing, huh?
Well, it's like I told Brian Shelton. I mean, I think like 30 or 50 pages is too much. I mean, to me, if I'm in Brian's shoes and I'm coaching a player, give me, out of those 50 pages, I need to come up with the 4, 5, 6 really critical things. Where do they like to serve on the big points? Where do they like to pass on the big points? That type of thing. But to be bogged down with it to the point where it could lead to paralysis, to me, is not going to be good especially for a guy like Ben, who's an athlete and needs to play with his instincts rather than to try to think everything through. So obviously the stats are coming up with nowadays are almost mind-boggling in comparison to what we used to be able to come up with basically through your mind lifetime. And so there's nothing that you can't find out about a guy now. Between all the analytics and all the YouTubes and all the match, I mean, there's no reason for one person not to be able to scout another person nowadays.
With favorite drills, we were asked all the time to talk about drills, singles, doubles. Why don't you just give us a couple of favorite drills we can?
Yeah, my favorite singles drill is the cross court down the line drill that you just keep, you go in each direction. 5 minutes. I would start practice that way almost every single day back in my Kansas days. So it's just, to me, you show me 2 guys that can do that drill efficiently. I'll show you 2 guys that can probably play the game decently. That's the one I like for singles. The other thing I love about it in a team situation is if you go 5 minutes cross and then turn around and go 5 minutes line while the other person's going cross, you're going to be in a sweat and we're ready to go. You're not going to spend the first 25 minutes not being in a sweat, not getting going in a practice. So that's another reason I like that drill. The double side, I love to play that game 2 up, 2 back with 6 or 8 guys where, you feed the ball in. They got to take an approach shot, play the point out. They win that. I feed them second ball in as a volley. If they win that, you feed in the overhead. And if they win that, they take the other side. And you got to be on the other side to be able to get points. And we played that. I played that a lot, especially, doubles in college is the important thing. So that's a game that incorporates almost everything except the serve and return. Obviously, those are important, but it's a good game to get a lot of reps in from the double side.
No, I love that game at Dave Anderson's place. They call it 3-zone. It's a fantastic drill if they already have strokes. If they don't have strokes, I think a lot of times people love a drill like that. Just simply love it. I think a lot of times when parents come up to see the end of a practice, they'll see that drill. But if people can't hit the ball, you got to do all the hard yards first before you do a drill like that. The other drill you mentioned, some people just call it a simple figure 8, where one goes cross court, one goes down the line. 195 times across the baseline is a mile, so you got to move. And the other thing too, today I find that a lot of times kids don't have a practice partner. It's like, who are you going to do drills with? Who are you going to do drills with? I mean, it used to be years ago, you take a private lesson once a week and then you just call people up and you go to court and do drills. Those days, that's not the same as it used to be.
Times are changing, Smitty.
One last one is this is from Paul Showers.
Yeah.
Brian Shelton and David Roditi, how will they be similar and how will they be different? I mean, you've known both of them a long, long time. Both NCAA championship coaches. And
both have a tremendous love for the Gator tennis. Both are hardworking in their own ways. Both of them are uber competitive. I think both of them really enjoy being on the court and the teaching side of things. And I think both of them are really good with people, I would say.
Yeah, that's key. Don't you think that question's when that's asked? I mean, most top coaches, there's far more similarities than there are differences when you really get right down to it.
I think so.
I think that it's like people would say Vandermeer and Braden and I think a lot of people would say, well, like say in our place, I mean, obviously Vic was the cornerstone. We were training coaches formally. And I remember telling that gal who worked for you, Jennifer Roberts, and she said, well, Vandermeer teaches this and Braden teaches this. I like Braden. And she got it. She had been through your program. She had already been in college, more experience than a lot of the younger students. I said, Dennis is going to come in and spin our wheels. What he's going to do with group dynamics and corrective measures. And I think just being open to learn. But I think really in the end, rumor is more exciting than fact. And I think the championship coaches, there's more similarities. I was told this one time, this would be a question that you could answer. There might be 10, maybe 20 on the women's side, 10, 20 on the men's side of college coaches get up every day and their motive is to win a national championship. Do you think the number's small or do you think the number's large?
I would say that number probably pretty close to correct, just from the standpoint that there's probably only 20 on each side that even have a chance to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's 25, 30. I just don't think in this day and age, especially right now with the NIL and everything that's going on, it's not going to be, you're not going to see that Cinderella story. You're going to see that story less and less, in my opinion.
So you're 26 years old. You're the coach at Kansas. I mean, I've coached a lot of players where they were happy to be a part-time coach at a community college. So you're at a Division I school, but I can remember going back to that national indoors and going, I don't think you're going to get Ty Tucker to go to Kansas. So what happens is I think in college tennis, a lot of times a coach, they take recruits to one level and they really work and they develop their players and then they're playing against somebody who just simply recruited better. What's your comment on that?
Well, I think I think that was the story the whole time I was at Kansas. I mean, we were not getting the top players at all, but I mean, between what I learned from Braden and just an uber work ethic, I mean, I was putting, like I said, 26 guys. We had 2 courts. We only had 6 courts, but I had someone feeding balls on those lower 2 courts from 2 p.m. until 5:30 every day. And so I would shuffle every men's player and every women's player in and out of those courts where it was just all fundamentals and repetition, fundamentals and repetition.
Yeah.
And like I said, the cream would end up rising to the top. But, you're coaching 2 teams and you're out there, you're trying to run a lot of people on and off courts in a short period of time. You got to be organized. That's another thing that we haven't talked a ton about. But I mean, I think if you're not organized, your chances of succeeding are minimal. I just think.
Yeah, no, I tell coaches if they don't get up really early and write down, okay, short list. What do I got to do today? Or the night before, they're not going, okay, what do I got to do tomorrow? And I think the really top ones are, they're taking some time both in the morning, but even the night before. Okay, this is my priority list. This is what I got to get done. But I think really the set of circumstances. But I think what young coaches can get from this podcast, someone like yourself, how's it go? Days are long, but decades are short. So you have decades in the game. But if you have this, you just got to get up every day and pursue it with passion.
I just heard from one of my former players at Kansas. His name's Paul Garvin. Grew up in Jack Sharp was his teacher. Jack Sharp has developed a lot of really, really outstanding tennis players out of the Chicago Midwest area. But Garvin has gone into teaching tennis himself, and he said to me, Coach, I think about you every morning when I get up at 5 a.m. and I'm on the court by 6 a.m. How can anybody say anything nicer to you than that? After, he played at Kansas in the 80s or early 90s. That's a compliment beyond the compliment type thing. But that's what it was like. That's what you're saying. You're the same way. Guys that are getting it done, you can't get it done by sleeping till noon every day.
Yeah. No, that's a great. There's so many to end on, but the Perl, the pillow begins with P. The Pearl's got to put his head on the pillow. Let's Yvonne, let's rattle off a few pearls from this podcast, and can't thank you enough for taking time and talking to our listeners, Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yvonne.
no, I appreciate it. Yeah,
Yvonne's he's gonna give us the David Letterman top 10. David Letterman went to Testicle Tech. Everybody say Ball State.
Yeah, let me go through a couple here.
Here you go. Nice and loud. Here we go.
Listening. All right.
Pearl's got the great laugh, though.
He's sitting top 15 in the world. He's not doing that badly. Competes like a rabid dog. PPP, parental permission for pounding. How about you worry about becoming the best player in Florida before traveling to ITFs? Coaching Ben Shelton is like riding a secretariat. Your serve is a pea shooter. You need a bazooka gun. The volley is a lost art. Throwing up a grenade and running under it. Never forget the little guy. Ty Tucker the player could not play for the Ty Tucker the coach. 10-point tiebreaker. Not as much of a sprint as you think.
I like that.
The figure 8 drill and the 3-zone drill. Fundamentals and repetition. And can't get it done by sleeping till noon.
Yvonne, you're not just a pretty face, my man. You were listening.
Thanks.
Listen, I appreciate it. I love spending time with you guys. Want to do it anytime, Smitty.
Yeah,
and,
that was fun.
I appreciate you asking.
All the best to your
nice
wife,
meeting you.
Your son.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about
Same
Sam. P.S. What's Sam doing?
Sam is an assistant athletic director in charge of annual fundraising at Elon University in North Carolina. So he's kind of responsible for raising $1.6 million for all the scholarships for all the athletes. And he's really enjoying himself. He loves it. And got a girlfriend nowadays who Cindy and I adore. So everything is going well for Sam. I appreciate you asking.
No, it's great. The Pearl, it's great that he's in sport. It's amazing. But no, thanks so much. And also for our listeners, I'll put it up on Facebook, is Pearl is the Darty Mongoose.
Yeah, put it up.
Vic Braden Tennis Channel, or I should say the Tennis Channel, they have Vic's library, and they put together a nice piece. It's like a trailer for a movie. I know, Scott, you've seen it. I'll put it up. And Scott's the guy was smoking the cigar, shirt off, darting across the court, interrupting the match. You're not supposed to walk across the court. So Pearl became a movie star with Vic Braden back in 1979, 1980. It was awesome. The Darty Mongoose. Thanks again. It was awesome.
Thanks, good guys. Yeah, have a great night.
All right,
Appreciate
bro.
you guys.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, listeners. The Pearl. Don't you love that laugh, Yvonne?
Yeah, infectious.
Actually, his brother, his nickname was Brutus, but his brother came to spend time with us, and he actually went overseas. He was a Braden coach. Now he's a lawyer, but the people, there's quite a few people who, in our network from training coaches, they may have not crossed paths with Scott, but they could just tell by the laugh that and I'm telling you what, Monroe, Michigan, I used to always say, because Vic Braden was so funny, is that there's something in the water in Monroe, Michigan. But I think it's interesting. Perl, I was teasing. Now you're starting at the top. At DCU, they just won the national championship. But there was some Perl magic. He was there for the semis and in the finals when they won. I know you and I watched that. But he has that background of building programs as well. Certainly, one question I didn't ask. One of either Bob or Paul Shower says, "What does Perl bring to TCU?" And everything. He's a spark plug. He's just everything. And but I remember one time teaching a clinic in Chicago. I should be able to tell you the name, but it was a teaching pro in Chicago, and I just asked this guy, "Where are you from?" Monroe, Michigan, and I just said, Scotty Perelmen. This guy just lit up like, he was just like, yeah, you knew Scotty Perelman. Just lit up the room, and I said, yeah, let's tell Scotty stories. But his thing, Scotty, when I see people every day, and I just say, it's a new day, new opportunity to excel. I guess over time I changed that. He says it's a new day, new opportunity to succeed. He says it every day. We just greet people, and I'm stealing that from Scott Perelman. And it's a new day. You got to get that pep in your step. And I remember asking kids all the time, do you have snaps? It's like, look around. What do you have to do? You got to become a worker. Anyway, there's definitely some pearls, some golden nuggets. I guess that we could say there's some pearls from the Pearl. But listeners, thank you very much. Yvonne, thank you for putting this all together. And Scott Perelman, a dose of your time. Adios, amigos. It's in the books, 207.
Thank you.